Hello, and welcome to another review video. This time around, I'll be taking a quick look at some of the Pet Academy units. This seasonal comes with 2 REMs. The 5 Magic Stone one includes almost all Pet Academy units, and the 7 Magic Stone REM excludes the same units, in addition to all of the 5 and 6 star units. A common question is which REM has the most value, and for seasonals, it tends to be the 5 Magic Stone REM. Sure, almost all of the low rarities are garbage, but at least these can be exchanged for some of the new high rarity units, which are definitely worth a look. The 7 stone machine has slightly better rates, but I don't think that increase is worth the 2 extra stones per roll. Therefore, I think it's better to gamble in the 5 Magic Stone REM, because in the worst case scenario, you will just accumulate fodder, but maybe you feel different if you have no interest in the new exchangeable units. Let me know which machine you'll be rolling, if at all, in the comments below. And if you found the video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. This seasonal has a new idol minigame that is identical to the other ones. In this one, you will choose one of 3 bentos and then obtain some rewards from these 3 sheets after 8 hours. The bento choice doesn't matter, as you will eventually pull everything from each sheet and then move on to the next. You can reduce the 8-hour wait time by using the new bell currency, which you can obtain via login stamps, quests, or via exchange for Pet Academy Rainbow tokens, and each bell will reduce the wait time by 1 hour. Like the last minigames, the only sheets of note are the first 2, as these will give you some rolls and magic stones. The third sheet has less noteworthy rewards and will reset once completed. Sheets 4 and onwards will be a copy of the third, so at the very least, you should be aiming to complete the first 2 sheets. Each bell can be exchanged by 1 rainbow token, but these equips can also be obtained with the same currency. Neither of them look that interesting, but these are essentially free and will also let you complete some Pet Academy quests. I would look into getting them if you don't already own multiple copies of each. Bolsong and Orpherion are descended bosses that you can obtain to also complete some quests. Bolsong is largely unimpressive, but he is a farmable 2-unit system that can give you a rainbow board and a large cap break for your leader and helper. Orpherion is a new descendant, and in his dungeon, you will be able to perform port break. The unit itself is a piercer, but he pales in comparison to REM units who can actually loop that effect and bring other useful stuff to the table like Valentine Athena's Orb Gen and Self-Cap Break. However, Orpherion's Shield Break could be a lot more helpful in some dungeons, so I would try to get a copy and fully max skill it if you can. Their equip is also okay, and it can be decent on units with self-reliance. The gems that you get by part breaking can be exchanged for this equip, which is also not that bad for a farmable. It will be a little time consuming, but do try to get one if you can, as its gravity, orb gen, and shield absorption voids can be pretty handy, especially for farming. Orpherion is also the Sync Awakening requirement for some Pet Academy units, so do definitely get one and max scale it if you're going to be using these. Pet Academy Hera and some of the other units from some of the Pet Academy dungeons are also Sync Awakening requirements, so get them too if you see yourself using these. And while farming these and the other Pet Academy dungeons, remember that you can also get 30 plus points on certain plus limit breakthrough units, provided that they're not your helper. These 2 units can be bought for MP, but neither have that many uses at the moment, so I would probably skip them. Sakuya is especially very underwhelming, so save yourself the 300k MP. Typhon is the 1 million MP unit that will enhance the Pet Academy badge when obtained, but there isn't really a worthwhile Pet Academy team that needs the badge. As for the unit itself, Typhon can fit in a haste system, but since his active skill does loop by itself, you could just use him in any team that wants a looping roulette, though Typhon wouldn't be my first choice since he doesn't bring much value with the rest of his active skill effects. At the very least, Typhon's equip does come with 5 effective skill boosts and a couple of other useful awakenings, but honestly, it also doesn't seem worth the 1 million MP. Maybe if you're swimming in monster points and have a very shallow monster box, then getting Typhon for the equip is not the worst idea, but I doubt that many people fall under that category. First, make sure to check some of the future MP units that should hopefully come to an end very soon. MP is a scarce resource, so try to be tactical about how you spend it. Alright, now into some of the REM units. I'll only go over some of the ones that I think are notable, as the lineup is really crowded. As it is often the case, older units tend to not get that much love, so the ones that end up being notable in seasonal events are the newly introduced. These two units are exchangeable and might be worth a look if you're swimming in GFEs. If you don't have Valentine Athena or other commonly used piercers for Reinhardt teams, Kio could be used as he is also an answer to full heal or light boards on a very low cooldown, albeit his pierce effect only lasts for one turn. The +2 combo buff doesn't seem that significant, but it could be handy as it is sometimes hard to overcome combo-related shields with that row-based leader as he tends to crowd the board with maybe too many light and heal orbs. Kio's light equip is able to enable Reinhardt's Resonance Awakening, so even if you have some of the better piercers, you might still have use for this exchangeable unit in some form in your Reinhardt team. Kio's other evos are not that useful at the moment, so I would argue that the base and the light equip are of some use, though that mainly goes if you have a Reinhardt team. Base Valeria can bring a total of 12 skill boosts just by herself, and her board refresh active skill can let you clear dungeons without matching any orbs, though there really aren't that many places where you can get away with that, and those clears will also depend on RNG. Her Fire Evo has a lower cooldown refresh board active skill, so this form is the one that tends to be used for refresh shenanigans, since she's much easier to rehaste. The use cases for these two units are pretty low in numbers, especially nowadays, since we have units with better active skills and comparable amounts of skill boosts, so I wouldn't lose sleep over not getting them. These two duos are exchangeable, but only take Bad Academy units as fodder. Base Freyja and Freyja is very unimpressive, as haste systems don't have many practical applications at the moment, and even if those teams were relevant, the active skill doesn't bring much to the table. On the other hand, this duo's equips are somewhat interesting. The first one is alright for stacking OEs and to boost the healing and damage of a unit such as Ordeal Cerclia. Puck from ReZero is usually the better equip option since that one has 2 heal OEs and a team HP awakening, but this looks like an okay alternative. The second equip is good for fire swipe teams, particularly those that farm parts. And the last one is not the worst option if you need to skill boost and a dungeon boost awakening. Satsuki and Kanna make up a 2-unit origin system, but dark and light TBA teams, like haste teams, are not really a thing at the moment. I feel like you could build a decent team around them, but I wouldn't really bother if you have any other viable meta leads. I doubt you'll find that many friends who will put this unit as a helper, and exchanging or chasing 2 of this duo seems like a waste of fodder. Satsuki and Kanna's equip might have some uses, especially if you value the resist on them. I think the most interesting one is probably the second one, as 5 turns of damage absorption void can be pretty handy in some dungeons. Though this effect is not all that rare anymore, as something like Maid Milk's equip can bring much better awakenings or active skill effects to the table depending on the team. But at the end of the day, these 2 units wouldn't be my top exchange priorities, as the newly introduced ones look a lot more useful. These 2 are all BGM units, and they don't really seem worth it this time around. Vione is interesting, since with 2 copies, you can now loop at 20 billion team-wide cap break, though her being a wood PvP unit severely limits where you can use her, as that archetype is notoriously weak. She could still work in any other team that is able to match wood orbs, as at the very least, she can help you recover assist with her 4 Ls, and the occasional 20 billion cap break is a decent boost of damage. Though maybe not that great if you run units that have looping cap break effects on something like a 5 or 6 turn cooldown. Most teams would rather run utility-centric clerics, or those that at least have a bulk buffing active skill so that you can deal with all of their large hits in newer content. The GEARSTEP group doesn't play an important role with their active skill, so it'd be really hard to justify running them in most teams. At the very least, their equip is decent for rainbow damage dealers, but there's not much demand for this type of equip since the rainbow team at the moment avoids super gravity and thus doesn't care about running damage equips. The equip's new SDR awakening is nice, but this doesn't feel worth the $30. Sonia is another old BGM unit, but as a looping piercer and self-cap breaker, she doesn't seem that bad. If you like the other common options, she can even work in around her team so long as you put her next to Saria. Sonia's board change active skill can also serve as an answer to full heal boards, but the 6 turn cooldown might make it a bit tricky to time, and there's always a chance that the resulting board will give you less than 6 fire orbs, which will mean that Reinhardt will not be able to create enough lights to activate his later skill. Sonia's first equip is great for damage dealers, especially now with its new SDR awakening. The fire sub-attribute might be a deal breaker, but someone like Saria can also solve that issue. Margaridita is a new unit that seems like the water and wood version of Sonia. She has a very similar active skill with the same cooldown. However, this unit will only deal damage whenever you match water and wood orbs, so you can't really use her in a Reinhardt team. The most notable water and wood team at the moment is REM and RAM, and unfortunately, this unit doesn't really fit in there. Margaridita can synergize with some of the newly introduced water and wood units from Pad Academy. From what we know from JP, most of those units never reach the same level as REM and RAM. Margaridita's equip is unique at the moment as it is the only one that banishes and grants you Ls, a T, crosses, an SDR, and an SBR awakening. The combination of SDR and L awakenings alone make it very solid since these can let any unit use the assist recovery latent and be able to resist up to 4 skill delays. However, if that's the only thing that caught your eye, you should first look into the other unit that has a banishing equip with similar enough awakenings that will probably be more useful since it comes with the haste active skill. Delays are usually not that valuable in most dungeons as status shields are extremely common. Gaslowe is a looping piercer and attribute absorption voider, but he will also give you a lethal poison skyfall. If you're on a team that has skyfall buffs or has very poor recovery, getting a poison skyfall could end your runs either outright or bring your HP low enough for an enemy to finish you off. With his awakenings, Gaslowe is mainly just good for farming eggs or parts, and since some of those dungeons are often not that long, you might not need all that much coverage against those two mechanics. His equip also seems very niche. 2 SDRs and its other utility awakenings are interesting, but it does feel like overkill. Obviously, self-reliance units could use this, but I think other banishing equips with haste active skills or other non-resist awakenings will be better in general. Menoa is the badge unit of the event, so she can be purchased for $30 or exchanged for Pad Academy units. Upon obtaining her, she will give you the Pad Academy badge, but this one is not that useful as there aren't that many viable teams that are mainly composed of Pad Academy units. The base's second stage active skill makes her a 1-turn cooldown orb maker that could be useful in some dungeons where enemies hit you with less than 5 turns of unmatchable debuffs. With her in a team, you won't have to run a unit with an unmatchable recovery latent. However, she is a wood unit, and need I say more? Her equips don't look all that bad, but I feel like the fodder that you would use for Menoa could be better spent on some of the other new exchangeable units. These 2 orb skin units are purchasable for $20, but I also see very little reason to get them. Mei Fang can loop her 2x HP buff and adjacent ally cap break effects with 2 copies, and while that doesn't sound that bad, you will be required to run 2 of her as subs to get the most value out of the cap break effects. Team building around her is also very difficult since her base transformation cooldown is 39 turns. It would have helped if she had her Heart L awakening on her pre-transformation version so that you can at least run the skill boost plus latent. Also, it would have been ideal if she had gotten one of the new bicolor awakenings, because then this tricolor leader would be able to ignore attribute disadvantages. Romia could be used alongside dark PvP units like Dark Illuminate, though this unit's active skill isn't all that valuable outside of very punishing super altitude dungeons like Gale Cloud. Romia's looping 45% auto heal might not cut it in newer dungeons, especially if your team's recovery is very lacking and after tanking large hits, which are very commonly found in in-game content. I've mentioned this unit in other videos, but Dark PvP will hopefully be getting a new leader very soon that is on the same playing field as Reinhardt, and unfortunately for Romia, Utsuru from Gintama has no need for her at all. And honestly, even Dark Illuminate teams can function fine without Romia, so I don't really see where you could use this unit. Romia's equip is a bit more interesting since it is the second one that comes with a 6-turn haste active skill. Though getting this equip up and running right away will be extremely difficult outside of co-op teams. It could come in handy in some ranking dungeons where you need to rehaste war makers, though a unit that is much easier to get up and running right away and gives you a bigger haste is Tundarda. I guess if you don't have that risking Gundam unit, getting the Romia bundle seems a bit more tempting. Personally, I don't think she'll be all that useful, so I would recommend skipping her. Eva is the new BGM unit, and she's okay if you want to farm XP in the Pad Academy Colosseum. But outside of that, it's hard to think where she can actually fit in. You can loop her effects with 2 copies, and most notably, her Super Gravity Void effect will allow her to easily reach 50 billion damage on each ping, even with her unimpressive damage awakening. But running 2 Evas in a team doesn't leave you with a lot of flexibility, and running just 1 copy doesn't seem that valuable. Her equip gives a good amount of effective skill boost, and the SDR awakening is always very useful, but the 3 attribute awakening doesn't give much of a damage boost. Also, the 10 combo orb generated will probably not be of any value. Overall, I see very little reason to get this new BGM unit. Reeta is a new mid-priority unit and she can help tank large hits in Rainbow or Rainbow-ish teams. With her looping damage absorption void and self-cap break buff, she can definitely be of use in a team with other self-cap breakers. though at the moment the only rainbow team that comes to mind is Freyr's, and Reeta doesn't bring much to the table other than the big shield, since Himmel serves as the usual Omniboider. Rita's expert multi-match Super Awakening does make her interesting, but most people are not very interested in matching Rainbow in 5 seconds or less. Her equips 3 Attribute Awakening, just like Eva's, also seems a bit lackluster, but this one's Guardbreak Awakening can help Rainbow units bypass enemies' defense. The lack of haste on the active skill is not ideal, but this can go on someone like Freyr. Fritz makes up a swipe system with 2 copies. In addition, she also gives an auto-heal effect, so you will have a bit more freedom when it comes to the rest of her team members. The unfortunate part is that her leader skill does not provide any follow-up attack damage. You could asymmetrically pair them with someone else, but there's no one at the moment that brings a significant amount of FUA and at least 4 combos that would make this a comfortable swipe system. If you have other swipe leaders like Kikoro and Ordeal Odin, I see very little reason for going after a Fritz system. Umisachi and Yamasachi are also somewhat of a 2-unit swipe system, but depending on the dungeon, you might have to break up the generated columns into TPAs so that this unit can actually deal damage, and to fully activate their leader skill. This mid-priority unit doesn't seem all that bad, but it might get power cut very soon. We don't know if we'll get Gintama, but Ibo Gintoki is a much better fire and water version of Umisachi and Yamasachi, as that unit, on top of dealing with damage void shields, will also deal with damage absorption shields. And with their leader skill, you will not have to worry about matching a special shape. Gintoki also happens to be the batch unit of the collab, so you can get 1 copy of him guaranteed for the price of 100 magic stones. With Umisachi and Yamasachi, you'll be at the mercy of RNG. Even though Gintama is not a guaranteed collab for NA, I would argue that chasing Umisachi and Yamasachi is not really worth it, since the rest of the units in the seasonal are very underwhelming. At least Gintama has a lot more useful units and a leader that is on the same level as Reinhardt. Umisachi and Yamasachi's equip does have a great set of awakenings, but I also don't think that is worth the chase. These 2 duos are exchangeable for Pet Academy units. Mion is a decent damage dealer for water and wood teams, and she is able to recover assist with her L awakenings. She does have 2 SDR awakenings, meaning that even with the assist recovery latent, Mion is able to resist up to 6 turns of skill LAs, and up to 8 if you also put an SDR equip on her. Though honestly, this is a bit overkill. Mion's active skill is also a bit underwhelming in the latest endgame dungeons where a 35% damage reduction shield might not exactly cut it. It is workable if you stack enough bulk via your other units and equips, but this unit will get overlooked by units like REM and RAM who give you access to a bigger shield. Mion's equip also seem okay, but also don't really shine anywhere. The second one seems like it could work in a ranking dungeon, though the orb placement doesn't seem particularly special to me. Maybe get it if you really care about rankings and are swimming in trade fodder. The Yurisha duo could work as a double absorption voider in a Bad Bats Marukuro or Valentine Noah team due to these units' fire and water awakenings. However, these 2 leaders have fallen out of fashion, either because they don't have a significant recovery boost in their leader skill or only have 2 damage pings. Maybe we'll get more fire and water units in the near future that could make use of the Yurisha duo, though at the moment, no team desperately wants a unit like this. That being said, you might still want to look into exchanging for this unit, as their second equip can be very useful to activate a unit's self-reliance awakening. The Rainbow OE Awakening can make it so that you don't have to worry about stacking that many OE Awakenings via other equips. The unfortunate part is that the Fire Sub-Attribute Awakening limits the number of units you can use this on, and the fact that this equip doesn't come with a haste or a delay is also not ideal. These 2 other duos are also exchangeable for event units. The Siren duo is a damage dealer, but to get access to her cap break, you will need to have a recovery buff active. I think the intended units to enable this duo is an OG Siren duo system. With 2 of those and 1 of this duo, you will basically be devoting 3 units for an origin system, which doesn't leave you with a lot of flexibility when it comes to the rest of the team members. Instead of the OG Siren duo, you could run somewhere like the Himmel duo, but then the issue is that an enemy could interrupt that unit's recovery buff, and then you will not have access to this duo's active skill. The Siren duo's equips, on the other hand, look a lot more interesting. The first one has a great mix of utility and damage awakenings, plus, due to the fact that the last few endgame dungeons don't have a void buff, you could get a lot of mileage from the 35 turns of 2x recovery and the bonus combo. And while yes, any recovery debuff will override this equip's buff, at the very least, the 1 bonus combo effect will remain for the full 35 turns, as combo debuffs do not affect combo buffs. The second equip is the only other one that banishes and grants both an L and a ZR awakening. The other option at the moment is Pad Academy Margaridita's equip, though this one is a lot more valuable since generally haste effects are way better than delays. Zela and Cherun are an auto healer that can cap break your leader and helper. This unit can synergize with other position-based cap breakers like Mion, so if you carefully place your units, you could make a team with a pretty high damage ceiling. The most notable team that uses this duo is this one, but as you can see, you don't need to own this duo on your side. The issue will be finding a friend that actually runs Zela and Cherun as leaders. But if you're on the fence about exchanging between these two units, maybe this fact will push you over the edge in choosing the Siren duo. Zela's duo's equips don't seem as interesting. The first equip seems like it could work in a ranking dungeon, but I don't think that the orb distribution is all that great. 14 orbs is a very awkward number, not to mention that the random placement of the orbs is a bit of a liability in ranking dungeons where you need to clear as fast as possible. The second equip has solid awakenings, and its active skill could be used in farming setups due to the bonus combos and auto heal effects. It could be handy in a dungeon like El Cloud, but its center duration will not be enough, as your team will actually need to heal as soon as the equip's effects are done. These two are mid-priority units, so the only way to obtain them is to roll them. Yura is one of the few units that can void the super gravity debuff. With that effect on, Yura will be able to easily reach 16 billion damage on all pings, even with her lackluster damage awakenings. She does bring a lot of utility with her 5 resist awakenings, though even with those, she might not be worth running as a sub since her active skill doesn't seem that strong. The 3-turn cooldown means that your team will still need to be able to deal damage while the super gravity debuff is enabled, and even though HP buffs are needed in in-game content to tank large hits, 2.5x HP might not exactly cut it. Chronos is a looping cap breaker for Gat and Devil types, and he is meant to be used alongside Pad Academy Fritz. The cap break is needed for that swipe unit, and by running Chronos as an asymmetrical pairing, you will be able to deal with enemy resolves. However, in a Fritz and Chronos setup, you will still need 2 more combos to reach 10C so that your units can actually deal damage. Chronos could definitely be of use in teams where you have multiple Devil and Gad units. With him, you'll be able to increase your team's damage output and also bring a looping shield. But as I mentioned with Mion, a 35% damage reduction shield doesn't seem all that great, especially because 40% damage reduction is sort of becoming the norm now. Both of these units' base forms are not that impressive, but you should still keep an eye out for them since their equips are pretty amazing. Since both vanish, they will be able to activate a unit's Self-Reliance Awakening. Yura's is great for damage dealers that are missing a Levitate Awakening, and not to mention that a 3-turn haste on a 7-turn cooldown will be extremely helpful by making skill boost requirements a lot easier to meet. Chronos equip doesn't boost the damage of the base unit by all that much, but this is the first equip that grants an all-stat awakening. This can drastically increase a self-reliance unit's HP. The prime example that uses this equip in JP at the moment is a Gintama unit that will almost bring around 90k raw HP to your team. The delay effect on the equip can be completely useless on some floors, so to make this equip viable, the rest of your team will likely require more specific equips to work around it. Having a negative orb skyfall debuff without assist would typically flood your board with negative orbs, and thus neuter your damage and healing. But with enough similar equips like these two, you might be able to overpower that debuff even without assist. Camilla is another mid-priority unit that I'm sure a lot of people are after. Most of those people are interested in farming MP in dungeons like Greywood Ascended. Camilla is the only unit with 6 dungeon boost awakenings that also comes with a button active skill, so farming trivial dungeons can be done fairly quickly with multiple copies of this unit. She can also be used to farm XP since her latest skill gives you a 1.7 boost, though she doesn't see that much use as of late outside of some mid-game technical dungeons, mainly because nowadays we have other units like the Mini Remdra and Bartender Celine that give higher XP boost. The equip has the same active skill as the base and a dungeon boost awakening, so it is also great for farming the same dungeons. Though I feel like getting more than 6 Camillas is overkill. Since the active skill is the same, you don't really need to overcharge this. Still, most people will benefit from having multiple of this unit. The bad news is that Camilla, Chronos, and Yura are all mid-rarities in a very crowded and underwhelming REM, and because of that, I could totally see some people skipping the seasonal altogether. Throughout the event, through quests, login stamps, and the idol minigame, you will get 10 for your rolls. Maybe wait until you get all of them and see if you get lucky getting any of these units. If you happen to miss out on whoever you're interested in, then I think a couple of rolls is not the worst idea. And if you don't roll any of these 3, you can still use the units you get as fodder for units like the Siren and Zela duos. The Siren duo has 2 interesting equips, and I think the most notable one is the Banishing one that grants you L and SDR awakenings. The Zela duo can be a decent leader once we get Toka's new Evo. The cookie cutter team does require you to own 2 REM and RAMs, so if you don't own those, then the Zela duo might not be that valuable. Even if you do like those water and wood units, you might want to get Zela and Cherun so that you can use them alongside units like Kikuru and hopefully Evo Gintoki in the near future, who could use a cap break and auto heal effects. Zela and Cherun can definitely be replaced by other units and equips, but the condensation into one active skill makes them very useful in no assist dungeons. I don't think that any of the bundle units are worth the money this time around. Some do have interesting equips like Romia and Sonia, but these seem extremely niche or are replaceable by other units or equips. I feel like the units on the screen are pretty much it when it comes to the most valuable units from this rerun, though if you think I overlooked someone, let me know in the comments below. Alright, that does it for this video. Best of luck if you're rolling. Thank you guys for watching, and a special thank you goes out to Ages Number 1, Austin, and Okor Panda, Breastfeeding Obama, Daniel, Eddie Ryan, Professor, Slotham, and T Bunny Fish for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.